Um, Good afternoon, everybody. It's so good to see you here. My name is Angela Kirabo. I'm from Uganda, a very small country in East Africa. I'm going to be speaking to you today about Cyber's Food for All. Cyber's is Latin for food, and Cyber's Food for All is an initiative that I run back home in Uganda. It's a small organization that works with women farmers and teaches them to do food value addition, post-harvest technologies, nutrition, and food safety. So I'm here also as a Mandela Washington Fellow. Mandela Washington Fellowship is a flagship program of President Barack Obama's Young African Leaders Initiative. So it was started in 2014, and every year 500 young Africans are selected from the entire continent, and they're brought here to America, and the program constitutes a 6-week leadership institute. There are about 25 universities that are participating in the Leadership Institute. I myself was at Syracuse University at the Maxwell School of Public Leadership. And after the 6-week institute, there's a presidential summit in Washington. Yes, we meet the president, we have tea with him, we shake his hand, it's all pretty cool. And after the summit in Washington, there's an optional 6-week internship. So out of the 500 young Africans that come to Washington for the summit, 100 others are selected to do an internship in selected organizations in the US. I happened to be selected for that as well, and I did mine with USDA in Washington too. I was working with the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and it was a very enriching experience for me because I got to deal with many farmers in America with very many extension programs. I sat on peer review panels for grant projects under the USDA, and it was all a very good experience. And it's because of the Young African Leaders Initiative that I'm actually here. They sponsored my trip here, and they wanted me to share the work that I'm doing back in Uganda, and I'm very happy to be presenting that to you today. I hope you'll enjoy the presentation. Please feel free to stop me where you don't understand anything. If I'm speaking too fast, or if I say anything that you don't understand, just let me know, yeah? Okay. Yeah, so that was at last year's summit. It was a very fulfilling experience, being able to meet with the president and hear his words of wisdom. And it's one of those experiences that I still look back on, and I'm very, very grateful to the Mandela Washington Fellowship for, everything that I've been able to accomplish. Since I finished the fellowship, I've been able to grow my organization, Cyprus. It was only a community initiative before I did the fellowship, but right now it's a fully registered organization with a staff team and a vision and a goal that we're really hoping to achieve in the next couple of years. So just a brief introduction about Uganda. So it's highlighted over there. It's the little country in orange. It's in Eastern Africa, and it's a landlocked country. We don't have direct access to the coast, so a lot of everything that we export overseas has to go through the neighboring countries, and everything else that we import also comes in through the neighboring countries. The equator runs right across it, so it's very, very hot. It's extremely hot. The weather here has thrown me off a bit because I'm used to, 8 degrees and above. But it's a beautiful country. It's in Eastern Africa. That lake over there is Lake Victoria. It's the source of the Nile. I don't know if you've heard about the River Nile. So the source of the Nile is in Uganda. And yeah, that's Uganda. That's what it looks like. It's very small but very crowded, as you can see. I come from the south, right there, near Windy National Park. And that national park is known for its mountain gorillas. So there are about 800 surviving mountain gorillas in the world right now, and 600 of them are in that national park. So I invite all of you to come and, look at this national heritage in Uganda. Yeah, so that is Uganda, and more about it. It's situated in the Great Lakes region of Africa. It's surrounded by a couple of lakes, and that region is called the Great Lakes region. It's a tropical country. We have a population of 39 million. It's a very small country, but very densely populated. We also happen to be the second youngest population in the world. About 78% of our population is below 30 years of age. and the ratio of women to men is 4:1. And women are the people that are predominantly involved in agriculture. Yeah. So Uganda's economy is predominantly agrarian. You have about 36% of its GDP and 81% of its labor force and 31% of its exports all coming from agriculture. And women provide most of the work here in agriculture traditionally. Uganda is supposed to be a very rich country, but because we don't have the right systems, we don't have the right infrastructure, agriculture hasn't been given a lot of attention. So a lot of the work that goes into agriculture is very subsistence. People grow mostly food crops as opposed to cash crops, but it's mostly an agrarian country. And the major food crops in Uganda are plantains, I don't know, the cooking bananas, I don't know if you tasted those, and cassava and sweet potatoes and, you know, the regular bananas. And our cash crops are coffee, cotton, sugarcane, sunflower, tobacco, and tea. Food crops, plantains, cassava, sweet potatoes, millet, sorghum, corn, beans, groundnuts. We have a wide variety of crops that are grown in Uganda, but most of them goes into food crops as opposed to cash crops. And the countries that we export to, we don't export that much because of issues that I'm going to discuss later in the presentation. But those are the few countries that we manage to export to. So we have Kenya, Rwanda, UAE, Congo, Netherlands, Germany, and Italy. But you see most of them are neighboring countries that are just, you know, a couple of kilometers away from us. We don't export that much to so many other countries in the world. For example, there's so much that, you know, could be exported to Greater Europe and Asia and North America and South America, but we haven't been able to reach that kind of export capacity. But then we do import a lot from many other countries. For example, there are so many American products on the Ugandan market, from juices to cooking oil to packaged milk and, you know, all sorts of things. Yeah. So my presentation today is going to be about teaching the women of Africa value-added processing. But what is a value chain? A value chain is a set of linked activities that work to add value to a product. Yeah? So if you're growing corn, for example, you could sell the corn on a cob, but then adding value to it would mean, for example, processing it into flour or processing it into syrup or adding value to the original product, to the original food product from the farm. So it will consist of actions that improve the product, but all the while linking commodity producers to processors and markets. So it's a whole chain starting from the farm onto the middleman that's going to take it probably to a market, and then to the processor, and then finally to the end user. So it's a whole chain. That's why it's called the food value chain. It's an entire string of events right from the farm and then onto the fork. Yeah? And value chains work best when the actors cooperate to produce higher quality products. So each of the actors along the value chain have to be in sync with each other to make sure that the end product is something that is going to benefit every single person on the entire food chain. Yeah? So what is food value addition? Food value addition is a very integral part of the food chain. So like I've said, the food chain involves the farmers and the processors and the business people in the middle that link the farmers to the processors. It involves the marketing people. It also involves the end user. But food value addition itself is just the part where you add value to what you got from the farm and probably package it or process it to something that is going to last longer and be of more value to the end user. So value addition is a process of literally changing or transforming a product from its original form into something that has more value added. And why do we need value chains in Africa? I've already mentioned some of the few challenges that we face in Africa. So we have challenges in transportation. Our roads are really bad. There are some places that you'll go to. I know it's 2016, but believe me, there are some places that you'll go to that don't have tarmac roads. And those are very many places, by the way. There are inappropriate transportation mechanisms. You would imagine that food products are supposed to be transported probably in a refrigerated vehicle, in a refrigerated environment, but then we don't have that. So food is actually transported on open trucks with, you know, it's exposed to the sun, it's exposed to dust, And then the market facilities are not good enough either. So you have groceries here that are enclosed and are refrigerated. We have open markets where people just sell food. You know, the food is laid down on the ground and people actually come and buy it and pick it off the ground. So those are some of the challenges that we face in Africa, and that is why we need to add value. Because when you add value to food products, as opposed to having, I don't know, raw bananas transported from a farm on an open truck, you're going to have maybe a packaged banana that is transported in a refrigerated truck, and it's more valuable both to the producer and then to the end user. Yeah? So our export capacity has been hindered by the fact that a lot of agricultural products don't meet international quality standards. So we have a lot of agricultural products coming out of Uganda, but not every country is going to accept them because of certain quality standards that are expected of us. For example, we are one of the biggest producers of coffee in the world, but not all our coffee is accepted in every country because of a toxin called ochre toxin. It's a lot of our coffee is heavily infested with ochre toxin, and some countries on the international scene are not going to accept that. So what do we do? Yeah? And production capacity is so low in Uganda. You'll find that, like I'd already mentioned, 80% of all our processed agricultural products come from other countries. You find American juice on our shelves, and yet I know for a fact that we could be producing more maybe oranges than America does. But then we'll produce these oranges, they go to waste because they're not being transported properly, or they're not being handled properly in the post-harvest phase. So we are producing a lot of food, and yet we're importing a lot of processed foods, and this is not doing well for our economy. Yeah? So these are some of the road networks. So imagine you have to transport food on such a road for maybe 800 kilometers. It's not going to reach the end user in the state that it was when it left the farm. Yeah? And sometimes food is actually carried on a bicycle like that for so many kilometers. When that guy gets tired, he'll probably spend the night on the roadside with his bananas over there, and whenever he does reach the market, whatever condition that the food is in, that's how it's going to be taken. And obviously you're not going to be able to export that kind of, to export bananas after they've spent 3 days on the road and they're bruised and they've gone black because the sun was, hitting them. And yeah, so these are some of the challenges that we face. And that is a police guy that stopped a car that was carrying bananas like that. You can see their bananas inside the car, outside the car, under the car, on top of the car, everywhere. So these are some of the transportation mechanisms that we have in Uganda. And why do we need to add value? When you start a food value chain, you'll connect farmers to processors. If a processor is serious about the quality of his product, he'll want to invest in transportation. So if a processor invests in transportation, they're not going to allow things like this to happen. So we happen to be in a country where our farmers haven't been really empowered to be able to, in terms of capital, in terms of other things, to be able to afford better infrastructure and transportation mechanisms maybe. But when you enrich the value chain, you'll have probably a processor being able to invest in transportation, and things like this won't be happening. Yeah? Yes, so this is also a very common mode of transportation. So you'll find, it's crazy, sometimes you'll find maybe inside the truck there's like goats and chickens and cows, and then on top there's matoke, and then on the side there's tomatoes, and then, sorry I keep saying matoke, matoke is bananas in my language. Yeah, so you'll find that inside there's cows and chickens and goats, and then on top of it there's bananas, and then there's tomatoes, and this really, it can only happen within Uganda. Like, this is what we've grown up to know. We think it's okay, we think it's normal. Even the farmers that produce these bananas, they think it's normal, but that's not the way it's supposed to be. And the work that my organization is trying to do is to take us away from this kind of, this kind of transportation and this kind of practices. Yeah, so Africa lost its status as a net exporter of agricultural products in the early 1980s. It's very sad because in the 1980s and before, Africa was actually managing to export a lot to the rest of the world. By then, most of the African governments were still being run by European entities and American entities, and everything was okay. But then, much later, a lot of our governments have crumbled, and we're not, because of the poor systems, we're not being able to export as much as we used to. And since then, we're actually importing more than we export, and you find that our countries are in a lot of debt, and very little attention is being given to agriculture, which is also another problem that the organization that I work with is trying to, to solve. Yeah, so the current high economic growth rate that the African continent is experiencing, it will only be able to benefit the majority of our population if the value addition chains are enriched. Because the economic growth that we have right now, it's only benefiting the people at the top of the value addition chain. So you have the processors benefiting, or the distributors who are bringing in processed products, but what about the farmer at the bottom? Nothing is trickling down to the farmer. They're not getting information on where to sell. They're not getting broad networks on, that will help them to transport their products. So the people at the top of the food value addition chain are benefiting, but the people at the bottom, who are the farmers, they're not really benefiting anything from the economic surge that is happening in Africa right now. So my organization, Cybus, that is one of our mandates, to make sure that everybody on the food value addition chain, especially the farmers at community level, are benefiting from the economic surge that is happening right now in Africa. So, like I said, this is an example of a marketplace. Food is going to be sold like that. This is an example of bananas, and Uganda has a very popular nickname. They call it the Banana Republic because there's just so many bananas everywhere you go. There's, lots of bananas. But that is an example of a marketplace. Food is sold like that. Sometimes it won't be bananas, it will be tomatoes, it will be oranges, it will be apples, but then they'll be on the ground like that. And that is how people purchase them. So this is not very attractive to somebody, for example, to an exporter or somebody in a more developed world or in a more developed country who would want to have that on their plates. This is not very sustainable. First of all, it's in the sun for days, it gets spoiled, it gets bruised, but we've become so comfortable with taking substandard products, and that's just the way it has been, and very little is being done about changing it. Yeah, so according to the World Bank report in 2012, the value of Uganda's value-added products in 2011 was standing at $3 billion, and that of Tanzania, a neighboring country that is not even half as fertile as Uganda is, or doesn't have the good climate that we have. It's the value of its value-added products is $5 billion US. And this makes me very sad because, I feel like Uganda has so much potential. We have everything that we need. We have the good soils, we have really good climate, but then very little is being put in terms of structures that could improve agricultural produce and export. So we're really lagging behind in that area, and that is why I was really inspired to start this organization, Cybus Food for All, so that we can address problems like that. We're not going to be able to solve every single problem that Uganda has, but we stand as advocates for change. We're a voice for the farmers, we're a voice in the government, we want to influence policy change, which we've managed to do so far, and it may not all be able to happen at once, but I know for a fact that one day we'll have more voices together with us and we'll actually be able to influence actual change. Yeah. So you'll find that, for example, in a rural setup, somebody's going to have a farm of, let's say, oranges, but they won't even know the value of what they have. So if I go to them out of the blue and I tell them I want to buy maybe 100 kilograms of oranges or 200 pounds of oranges, and I want to buy them, for example, at $50, they don't know any better. They're going to sell it to me because they're not used to actually selling anything for a tangible amount of money or for a valuable amount of money. So the farmers are they're very disadvantaged because they have no information trickling down to them. Whatever amount of money that you offer them, they're going to take it, whether it's way below the market standard. They're used to subsistence farming, so any sort of cash that they get, they'll just take it. There are no systems for proper pricing of their products, and this has really affected the way in which they trade, and generally their economic standards and general livelihoods. Yeah. So, and another problem that the rural areas in Uganda face is very limited infrastructure in terms of the financial sector. There are no financial institutions, so you'll only find financial institutions in the capital cities or in the urban areas. Now, people in the urban areas are not really involved in farming. The farmers are in the villages, but these financial institutions do not go down to the villages. And some of these farmers in the villages don't even know that the financial institutions exist. There are financial institutions in Uganda that offer agricultural loans at very low interest rates. They offer agricultural insurance and so many other services, but people in the village don't know about this. So another thing that Cybers does is to make sure that this kind of information trickles down right from, from the urban areas to a farmer in the village who is not going to have access to a TV where these financial institutes advertising their services, who doesn't have access to the internet or has never even seen a has never even seen a computer. So how are they going to get this information? Another thing that Cybers does is to make sure that this information trickles down to these rural farmers and they benefit from it as much as somebody in the urban area could benefit from it. Yeah? So there are very few items that a Ugandan smallholder farmer can produce and sell profitably at first level. There's no systems for unified prices, there's no systems for unified trade. So whatever they can sell their product at is what they'll sell it at. If they sell it at $50 today, the next day sell it at 20, the next day at 70, there's no system. Whatever they can get is what they'll take, and that is one of the issues that we're trying to address. Yeah. So what is the importance of the value chain creation? A value chain approach in agricultural development will help to identify weak points in the chain and then make possible certain, actions that can be used to add more value to the agriculture chain. So all these issues that I've mentioned, all these challenges that we're facing, if there was no value chain, or if there were no set stream of actions from the farmer to the processor, nobody would know what the challenges in between are. So the importance of coming up with a full value chain is so that you can be able to identify what problems come along on the way and then see how to address them. Yeah? Do we have any questions so far? Anything? Okay. So I'm going to give you an example of the sorghum value chain in Uganda. Sorghum is, I can compare it to wheat. It's a cereal crop. It can be used to make beer, it can be used to make bread, it can be used to make cookies, and it's one of the biggest agricultural crops in Uganda. It has multiple end uses, including it can be used as porridge, it can be used as snacks, it can be used as couscous, it can be used to make beer. But before the sorghum value chain was actually officialized in Uganda, we did not realize the things that were going wrong along the chain. So we're being faced with problems like lower yields, we're being faced with problems like having a surplus of sorghum in Uganda but not having where to put it, or countries to export it to, or like a lot of sorghum would go to waste because there was no value being added to it. So the country would consume what it has to consume, and then there would be so much going into waste, and it would end up in animal feeds and all that is wasted material and resources. So when the sorghum value chain was officialized in Uganda, the problems that are facing the chain were actually identified, and right now it's one of the most successful value chains that we have. Sorghum 2 years ago was not even a cash crop, it was considered a food crop, but right now we're exporting to over 10 countries in Africa in terms of actual raw sorghum, in terms of fermented sorghum, in terms of beer, in terms of porridge, and in terms of flour. Yeah? So the problem that it was facing was, poor quality seeds, poor quality product at harvest, inadequate threshing techniques and post-harvest drying, inadequate grading, insufficient market development, insufficient training. But because the value chain for sorghum has been officialized and it has actually trickled down to the farmers, the government has taken this as an initiative, and it has trickled down to the farmers, so all these problems have been addressed. Yes, so this analysis for the sorghum chain, it underscores the importance of sorghum growers and breeders recognizing and managing for food quality, and then coming up with actions that can actually be used to solve the problems that are being faced in the sorghum chain. And because of that, there is, for example, a brewery that has been built in Uganda, and it has strengthened the sorghum value chain. So much of it is going into beer, and this is being exported, and at least everybody on the value chain, of the sorghum value chain, is benefiting, right from the consumers to the farmers where it came from. So what I'm really trying to say is the value chain doesn't only involve the farmers or the end users or the processors, it's a very big matrix of activities. So you have land, labor, water, and technology, you have organizational knowledge, You have payments, you have production and post-harvest handling, you have the products, you have the processing, you have the markets, you have finance and knowledge payments, you have knowledge payments. There are so many things that are integral to the food value chain, and everybody along all those different sectors has to play a very important part for the entire value chain to succeed. Now, what is happening in Uganda is that only the growers and the processors are involved in the value chain. Everybody else in between is not given that much attention. And another thing that my organization is trying to do is to make sure that everybody along this value chain is actually being given the attention that they need and benefiting from, from what it is that they're supposed to benefit from. Yeah? So what is needed for a value chain to succeed in Africa? The biggest component of a value chain to succeed in Africa right now is information. People don't have the information that they need. A farmer in the community, for example, doesn't have knowledge on where to go to access credit, to access bigger pieces of land, to access pesticides, to access whatever it is that they need to add value to the products. There is no information trickling down to the communities. So information right now is the biggest issue that the farmers in Africa are facing in terms of food value addition. And so once information has trickled down to these farmers, usually you're going to see a very big change and a very big improvement on the food value chain. So you have markets informing producers of price and quantity and quality needs and product handling and technology options. Then you have producers informing processors and markets on production quantities, and then you have processors and marketing agents providing producers with finance and inputs. So you see that every individual sector is feeding into another, and at the end of the day, everybody on the entire food value chain is benefiting. Yeah? So teaching the women of Africa value-added processing. So Cyprus Food for All is my organization, and why do we deal with women in particular? So in Africa, gender issues are still a very big problem. Women are still very, very marginalized. For example, you'll find that in a household, a woman is making most of the money, but after they make it, they actually have to hand it over to the man so that he'll decide what the money is spent on or how it is spent on. And you find that in Africa, the women constitute 70% of the informal economy. So they'll make the money, but then it's not even recognized. When economics, statistics, and demographics are being put across, the women are regarded as informal, not even formal. So according to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, women in Africa are responsible for 70% of crop production, 50% of animal husbandry, and 60% of marketing. But they're still not recognized. Even when they're doing all this, it's still very marginalized. Like, you're not going to find women being recognized for the work that they're doing. It's a very male-dominated society. And even when they undertake over 100% of food processing activities, for example, you'll find in the few food processing facilities that we have in Africa, it's very rare to find men doing that kind of work. It's looked at as a woman's job or a woman's work, and yet they're not really benefiting that much from it. And women make up almost 50% of the agricultural labor force in sub-Saharan Africa, and they work primarily in smallholder production. It's rare to find a woman working in big facilities. They're mostly left to the smallholder production areas. Yeah, so even, for example, in rural Africa, women are not even allowed to own land. So they'll be farming on a piece of land, but then they don't actually own it. And even what they're getting out of it, they're not allowed to own. They can't own the money, they can't own the food that is coming out of it. Whatever it is that they're getting out of it, they have to actually hand over to their husbands. Yeah? So, yes?
So I have a question, which is going back to the very beginning.
Okay.
Did you say that women were 4 to 1?
Yes.
The ratio of women to men?
Yes.
So there must be a lot of female-headed households.
Yes.
Where there isn't a man to have to turn the money over to.
Well,
so what impact does that have? I'm just wondering.
The woman is not directly looked at as the head of the household. As much as she does most of the work in the house or in the household, she's not actually looked at as the head of the household. The man is going to be the head of the household. So the woman will do all the work, but then even if they're getting money out of it, they'll take it to the man. But then again, still, Africa is still a very polygamous, you know, kind of, polygamy is still a very big institution over there. So sometimes you'll find a man having 5 wives, 6 wives, 7 wives, and that's looked at as okay. Yeah?
If it's not the partner of the woman at that house, could it be a relative then who then becomes the head of the house, a brother or uncle or even a son?
Yes. Yeah. For example, if maybe you have a married couple and God forbid the husband dies, maybe the husband's brother will now take over the household. Like in rural Africa, the woman is never going to be the head of the household. Yeah, it's a very, very patriarchal society. Yeah. Yes. So the rural wage gap between women and men in Africa, it's quite big. Depending on the country, it can be between 15 and 60%. So you'll find maybe where a man is earning $100 for something, a woman is earning maybe $15 or $20 for the very same exact kind of thing. Yeah. So my organization is Cybers, and what gap are we bridging, or why are we doing what we're doing? So when I started my organization, it was right out of college. I felt like I had this wealth of knowledge, and I was so willing to share it because I live in an urban area. Where I live, everybody goes about their business, you know, the way they want to, and they don't really care about what is happening next door. But then there are these people in the villages that actually need knowledge that we had, and it wasn't being passed on to them, like I've explained in earlier slides. So me and a couple of other friends that I went to university with started Cybers, Food for All, and it started as a volunteering initiative where we went to villages and talked to rural women groups and organized them into small units where they would be able to pick up financial management education, food value addition, nutrition, and food safety information. Yeah? So another big problem that was being faced in the rural areas was the fact that a lot of food was going to waste. So even when these women are able to produce enough for themselves and they have surplus, they don't have the right networks to take it to urban areas. So we'll just leave it lying around and it will just go to waste. There were no good post-harvest handling technologies or techniques that were being used, and that was another gap that Cybers was looking to bridge. So we also teach these rural women farmers in food value addition, yes, but then also post-harvest handling technologies. And then there were also high levels of malnutrition of women and children in villages. It's very funny, but the most fertile areas in Uganda, or the areas that produce the most amount of food in Uganda, are surprisingly the ones with the highest levels of malnutrition. So you'll find that because they're producing a lot more, they become a little bit more urbanized, they have more networks to the urban areas, so they sell all of it, and then they leave all the bad stuff for themselves, and then they end up being malnourished, the women are malnourished, and the children are malnourished. So on top of teaching them food value addition and post-harvest technologies, we also train them in simple nutrition methods, you know? Like, even if you harvested something from your garden, don't give away the very best and then leave the worst for yourself. You find that most of these women are eating basic things like maybe green beans and maize meal, and that is all they're eating. No fruit, no vegetables, because they're selling all of that. Yeah? And then women practicing agriculture are still so poor. So agriculture is still very intensive. We don't have heavy farm equipment. It's literally getting a hoe and tilling the soil. So a lot of energy is going into it, and yet these women are still really, really poor. So what are we going to do about it? What is Cybers doing about it? So we train rural women farmers in good agricultural practices. What can you do to make the most out of your yield in what you're growing? And then post-harvest handling technologies, like you saw in the markets with food being sold on the ground. You also find, for example, if grain is being grown, it's going to be dried on the ground directly. Like there's not even a polythene or piece of paper is put in between the grain and the ground. It's being dried directly on the ground. And for international standards, that grain is obviously not going to be accepted for export if you wanted to export it. And then SPS measures. SPS refers to sanitary and phytosanitary measures. It's a standard of EU. Sorry.